What started as a squabble over tariffs turned into a full-blown showdown between orange spray tan and American steel. Picture it, Donald Trump demanding 100% red, white, and blue homegrown Harley-Davidsons, or else. Meanwhile, Harley's standing there like, huh? Have you seen our parts supply chain? Suddenly, it wasn't about motorcycles. It was patriotism versus survival, politics versus production lines, and a whole lot of drama for a company that just wanted to keep the V-twins rumbling. It's not every day a US president publicly picks a fight with one of America's most iconic brands, but that's exactly what happened. One moment, Harley was the poster child for freedom, rebellion, and open roads. Next, they were smack in the middle of a trade war, being told they weren't American enough. Spoiler alert, things got messy, really messy. Now, before I get into things any further, if you've enjoyed this video so far, could you take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel? Over 98% of viewers watch these videos without subscribing, but it's a huge help to me in growing my channel. Thanks, and let's get back to it. So, here's where the plot thickens. As we know, Harley wasn't exactly riding high when this whole drama kicked off. Sales have been sliding for years, their stock took an 18% nosedive, and investors were sweating harder than a biker in full leathers at Sturgis in July. To make things worse, millennials aren't buying what Harley is selling, literally. The brand that once stood for untamed roads and bar fights now looks like your uncle's midlife crisis on two wheels. Not exactly a hit on TikTok. In the middle of this identity crisis, Harley is trying to pull off a magic trick, reinvent itself without ticking off its die-hard loyalists. And just when they thought it couldn't get more complicated, bam! 2018 hits, and Harley drops a bombshell. They announced they're moving part of their production outside the US. Cue the fireworks. Why? Because Europe slapped tariffs on American goods in response to Trump's whole American First routine. This meant Harley's bikes were about to get a lot more expensive overseas. And Europe, by the way, is Harley's second biggest market. So they did the math and said, well, looks like we're building some bikes elsewhere. The goal? Dodge the tariffs, stay competitive. The result? A political firestorm. Oh yeah, things got spicy real fast. The moment Harley's overseas plans hit the headlines, Trump lit up Twitter like it was the 4th of July. Harley-Davidson should build their motorcycles in the US. Don't get cute, he tweeted. Because nothing says statesmanship like a thinly veiled threat over motorcycles. He even went as far as declaring it the beginning of the end for the brand, accusing Harley of betraying the very country that made it famous. A dramatic turn considering he praised Harley as a symbol of American greatness just a year earlier. That's some serious whiplash. But Trump's outrage came with a side of selective memory. Harley wasn't exactly new to the whole building bikes outside the US thing. They'd been doing it since 1998, with factories in Brazil, India, and Thailand. Why? Because trying to sell American-made bikes in some markets, especially ones with brutal import tariffs, was basically business suicide. Slap a 60% tax on a $20,000 cruiser, and suddenly your bike looks less like freedom and more like financial ruin. So while Trump fumed about loyalty and American pride, Harley's execs were probably muttering, "We've been doing this, bro." The point was simple. It wasn't about abandoning the US. It was about surviving in a global economy where protectionist policies cut both ways. Tariffs weren't just punishing foreign companies, they were boxing in American ones too, and Harley was stuck trying to ride the razor-thin line between patriotism and pragmatism. At this point, the whole saga started to feel like a sitcom, except the stakes were sky high, and the punchlines came in the form of global economic consequences. Trump, in classic fashion, doubled down. He started lashing out at Harley while seemingly skipping the Trade 101 class. Case in point, India. For years, India had slapped a 100% import tariff on American motorcycles, including Harleys. That meant a bike that cost $15,000 in the US would suddenly be $30,000 on the streets of Delhi. Unsurprisingly, sales weren't exactly booming. Trump, calling it a scam, demanded that India slash the tax, so they did, cutting it in half to 50%. But to Trump, this was still totally unacceptable, because in his world, trade is only fair if it's completely one-sided, preferably in America's favor. So he kept hammering India's policy, turning it into a rhetorical weapon for his American First agenda. Now here's where it gets really ironic. While Trump rallied against India's tariffs, his own policies sparked a trade retaliation from the European Union. After the US imposed tariffs on European steel and aluminum, the EU clapped back, raising their import tax on American motorcycles from 6% to a whopping 31%. That's an average $2,200 hike per bike. Boom! Suddenly Harley was getting squeezed from both sides. On one hand, they were being guilt-tripped for not keeping everything 100% American. On the other hand, their bikes were getting priced out of Europe, their second largest market. Something had to give. The only realistic option? Move production of European-bound bikes out of the US. That way they could dodge the tariffs and stay in the game. Not ideal, not patriotic in the red, white, and blue sense, but for a global brand trying to survive on a tariff crossfire, it was just smart business. If anything, this messy standoff exposed the tangled web of modern trade. In a world where protectionism is back in style, it's not just about waving flags, it's about navigating a geopolitical minefield where every tariff sparks a counter-tariff, and every move has global consequences. Harley-Davidson wasn't just caught in a trade war, it was in the middle of an identity meltdown. Sure, Trump's Twitter tirades made headlines, but they were just one part of a much bigger existential crisis. The real problem? Harley was stuck between generations. The brand that once roared down Route 66 with a pack of grizzled rebels was now finding itself in a world where freedom came with a silent motor and a carbon-neutral footprint. By 2017, a massive 61% of Harley sales still came from the US, but those numbers were sliding downhill faster than a Sportster on a mountain pass. The old school riders were frankly getting old, and the young guns, they weren't biting. Harleys were too loud, too big, too expensive, and too tied to a lifestyle that didn't vibe with the city-dwelling, tech-loving, ride-sharing crowd. So Harley tried to pivot. First, they looked abroad. Places like India seemed like gold mines, millions of potential riders, a booming middle class, and a deep love for two wheels. But there was one problem: Royal Enfield. It already owned the Indian market with bikes that were cheaper, lighter, and deeply embedded in local culture. Harley's attempt to go smaller and more affordable was valiant, but it was like showing up to a cricket match with a baseball bat. Wrong sport, wrong crowd. Then came the Livewire, Harley's bold leap into the electric age. It was fast, sleek, and whisper quiet. The problem? It cost 30 grand. That's Tesla money for a two-wheeled experiment. It got praise from tech reviewers and motorcycle nerds alike, but for most potential buyers, the price tag was a deal breaker. Plus, hardcore Harley fans weren't exactly clamoring for a bike that didn't make their ears bleed. In short, Harley was trying to reinvent itself and stay true to its roots. It was a delicate dance, and the floor was shifting beneath them. Between the political pressure, international trade chaos, and generational divide, the company was trying to be everything to everyone and risking being nothing to anyone. Alright, let's dive into Harley's next chapter, aka the let's not die trying to be cool again era. After the Livewire fizzled more than it sparked, Harley realized it couldn't survive by just slapping its bar and shield logo on $30,000 experiments. It needed a strategy that was grounded, scalable, and, most importantly, relevant. In 2020, Harley's new CEO, Jochen Zeitz, launched a 5-year plan called the Rewire, followed by the Hardwire. If the names sound like bad rock albums from the early 2000s, you're not wrong, but the mission was serious. The goal? Refocus on Harley's core strengths. Trim the fat and stop trying to be all things to all people. That meant pulling out of dozens of international markets, cutting underperforming models, and refocusing on big cruisers, touring bikes, and the US market where the brand still had clout. But Harley didn't fully give up on innovation. They spun off Livewire into its sub-brand in 2021. It was a smart move, like letting the rebellious younger sibling move out and do their own electric thing without tainting the old-school Harley DNA. Livewire would become its own brand, with its own identity, allowing Harley to play in the electric space without alienating the bandana-wearing crowd. Knowing it couldn't go it alone, Harley also struck up a deal with Xinjiang Motorcycle, a Chinese manufacturer that owns Benelli, to build small displacement bikes for the Asian market. And with India still being too big to ignore, Harley partnered with Hero Motocorp to co-develop and distribute its motorcycles there. Like the new X440, a single-cylinder roadster aimed squarely at young Indian riders. It was Harley saying, fine, maybe we can't conquer the world with chrome and loud pipes, but we'll play the long game. Now, back to Trump. The fallout wasn't just political, it was cultural. Harley-Davidson, once draped in American flags and idolized as the chrome embodiment of freedom, now found itself in the crosshairs of a divided nation. For many conservative riders, Trump's condemnation turned Harley into a symbol of corporate cowardice, not American grit. Boycotts started bubbling online. Bikers posted videos ditching their Harleys, merch sales slowed. Even dealerships reported customers turning away, saying things like, "I'll never buy another Harley again, traitors." It was a PR nightmare wrapped in red, white, and blue rage. But here's the cruel twist. While Trump blasted Harley for going global, it was that exact strategy, global production, diversified markets, that might have kept the company alive. Harley wasn't turning its back on America, it was trying to survive a global economy where the rules had changed, and fast. Still, the damage was done. US sales, already slipping, took a bigger hit. Harley had alienated part of its base while still struggling to win over the younger, more diverse riders it so desperately needed. In trying to please everyone, patriots, investors, Gen Z, and global markets, it had almost pleased no one. The fight with Trump exposed a bigger truth. Harley-Davidson wasn't just in a trade war, it was in an identity war. And in that kind of battle, there are no easy victories. Just the hope that somewhere on some open road, the roar of a Harley still means something. The battle that began with roaring engines and political posturing continues to reverberate through both Harley-Davidson and American trade policy. As we head into 2025, Harley's predicament is still a complicated one. The company's shift to global production remains a core part of its strategy. Though the wounds inflicted during Trump's first term have left lasting scars, the American market continues to shrink, and international markets, while offering a lifeline, aren't a guaranteed cure-all. Meanwhile, Trump's return to the White House has reignited his protectionist rhetoric. His renewed push for Made in the USA policies, coupled with the threat of new tariffs, places more pressure on companies like Harley-Davidson. While the motorbike giant has adjusted and diversified, the political winds that once swayed them are blowing once again, testing the company's commitments to its roots versus the cold, hard reality of a globalized economy. In a way, both Harley and Trump are locked in a stalemate. Trump, with his nationalist agenda, struggles to find true allies in the corporate world, as companies, Harley included, navigate an increasingly complex global trade environment. Harley, on the other hand, faces a world that demands both tradition and innovation, fighting to stay relevant while keeping the nostalgic essence of its brand alive. Harley-Davidson, once the ultimate symbol of Made in the USA, now faces a complicated reality. The company, caught between national pride and the harsh demands of a global market, made a tough decision to move part of its production overseas to avoid steep European tariffs. Raised from 6% to 31% in retaliations for Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs, while sagging sales and a shrinking domestic market share, it became clear nationalism alone couldn't keep Harley competitive. Rising production costs, combined with the need to appeal to younger consumers, have left Harley struggling to balance its legacy with the demands of modern times. The brand's reputation has been marred by a trade war it never asked for, and questions of betrayal have haunted its every move. Was moving production overseas a betrayal to its American roots, or just a harsh business decision made for survival? The answer depends on who you ask, but one thing's for sure, the roar of a Harley engine will never be silenced, no matter where it's built. The conflict continues to unfold on multiple fronts, from social media posts to boardroom debates. Every new Trump policy sends ripples through the public conversation, and Harley-Davidson is stuck in the middle, trying to balance tradition with the need to adapt to an increasingly globalized world. This has become more than a trade dispute. It's a battle between nationalism and modern economic reality, leaving both sides with deep scars and an uncertain future. What do you think? Will this conflict ever end? And how do you think it will unfold in the years to come? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Until next time, ride safe, ride fast, and keep chasing the horizon. See you in the next video.